All right, welcome everyone to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Funston from Rifle PD. She has over 37 years experience in law enforcement, and she is the first past president of the CACP, which is the Colorado Association Chief of Police. I am so excited to have her here today as our guest. Welcome, Chief Funston. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, we talked offline, and you have such an incredible story and passion for wellness. So I really appreciate you taking the time. 37 years. Does it feel like it went by fast or slow?
It does, because I feel like I'm only 37 years old. No, it really does. It goes by quickly. And I remember as a young officer thinking, you have older officers that are thinking about retirement, and I was always like, oh my gosh, like that's so far off. I can't imagine working anywhere for 30 years. And here I am. It's been 37 years and it just seemed like great experiences, but it seemed like it did. It flew by very quickly.
Yeah, and I feel like the older I get, the more time goes quicker. I don't know. I had this moment recently where I was in an academy, and there was a young man with a tattoo that said 2000 on his thigh, and I was like, no, like, I'm like, it's happened, and the people are calling you ma'am, and I don't think it's out of respect anymore. I think it's because they just really see me as their elder. Um,
Well, and there's people that work for me that I've been working longer than they've been alive. And so it's kind of mind-boggling a little bit, but I'm very honored to have been in this profession for this long.
Yeah, and I would love to get a little bit of background on you and why you chose law enforcement as your profession, and maybe a little snapshot of what those 37 years looked like for you.
Sure. Well, I was living out east. I am born and raised Colorado, so I was out east and in a very early marriage, had a young child, and honestly, full openness here. I had no big aspirations of getting into law enforcement at all. Um, I was working for a credit collection agency and really was kind of looking for something a little bit better. And I was working in Hampton, Virginia, and saw an ad in the paper actually for a position as a police officer. And back then, it was in the 80s, they actually had their own academy. And so they would do your background and they'd hire you on and put you through their academy. And so I thought, well, I might as well try it. Maybe it's something that I can do. And as it turns out, I found that I was pretty good at it and I liked the job. So that's kind of my humble beginnings.
I always find it really interesting because I think that, and I know everyone has different opinions of this, but I feel like everything happens the way it's maybe meant to, and that, everything kind of leads you to where you are. And it seems to me that even though maybe you didn't have great aspirations, now 37 years later, you still love what you do, and you've had a long and successful career. So I think that that's great. I know that we talked a little bit offline about maybe some of the challenges that have happened throughout your career and some of the experiences that you've had. And I was hoping that maybe you can share, one of the challenges that you experienced.
Well, I know, back in the 80s, and it certainly the percentages aren't that much bigger, but were not a lot of women in law enforcement back then. I think there might have been one other female in the academy when I went through, and I'm not sure if she is still in law enforcement or not, but I just remember the challenges early on with even just trying to find clothes that fit.
Mm.
Most of the uniform apparel, even like typical like combat type style boots and things like that, they did not have in women's sizes. And so one funny story that I like to tell people is I used to wear two or three tube socks
Fill it
so
in.
that, so that my shoes would fit a little bit better when I would go to work. And I would wear like suspenders, just even just to keep my socks up. I mean, it was just kind of ridiculous. We've come a long ways when it comes to women in this profession. That's just one of the funny stories that I remember is just trying to find things that fit. And I was even probably much skinnier than I am now, so it was even tougher. But I was only in Virginia for about 3 years, and my husband at the time, we were both from Colorado, and so we decided to move back to Colorado. And I moved back to my hometown and was scooped up by the police department there relatively quickly and began working in my hometown. So it had its own challenges, just because you're coming back to a community where you're now enforcing laws and enforcing things, and you're going into homes of people that you knew that maybe you grew up with, those types of things. There was also a very good side of it as I knew everybody, and really was very well supported by everybody in the community too. So, um, there's been various challenges throughout my career, but I always felt like um, this is good because it's teaching me something.
Mhm.
And I think it's just important to keep moving forward whenever you have these barriers that are in front of you, and especially as young women, I think it's not a typical job I think that women look towards as far as a career. I think that's getting better. But that's also another reason that I continued on is I want women and young women to understand this is a great profession, and you can achieve the highest levels in this profession, if you're willing to put in the work and get past those things that get in your way.
I love that you said that the challenges teach you something because
Yes.
I 100% agree with that. And I would argue that the most challenging times in my life have been my biggest opportunity to learn and to grow. And it doesn't always feel that way in the moment. Like I don't think that anyone is like has a smile on their face in like the hardest times, like, yay, I get to learn and grow. Like that's not really, but I do think looking back now on some of the hardest times in my life, I'm like, wow, like that was an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and then to help and inspire others. And I think that we all have that ability, to take our traumas, our hard times, our challenges, and to inspire other people. And I love that one of your motivators forward was to be that inspiration for other women to know that it's possible. Because I think that, and I don't know how much I shared with you in our offline conversation, but when I was growing up, I didn't have any good examples around me. I didn't know that it was possible to be better than what my surrounding circle was. And it wasn't great. I come from a background, my parents were both drug addicts and my dad was incarcerated. And so like for me, like my like bar that I had set for myself was, well, if I don't end up like them, then I guess I'm good, and I wish that I had people in my community or in my life that were that example of like, wow, I can be like that. I
Hmm.
can be like her, I think would have been so beneficial for me. And so I love that that's something that you've done for other young women in this profession.
Well, thank you. And yeah, those struggles, they aren't fun. I wasn't saying thank you then.
Yeah.
I was probably cursing and complaining and just the things that you do when you're faced with these big struggles. The wisdom comes maybe later, when you realize that, hey, that really did push me in this great direction
Yeah.
and allowed me to do A, B, and C, but in the thick of it, it's not fun and you hate it. And there was many, many times that, I was looking to God and saying, why? Like, why do I have to do this? Well, now it's like, I know why, because I was able to somehow pull that strength together and get through it. And yeah, I hated every step of it. But when it was over, it was like, okay, I get why this happened. And I'm glad that it happened. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned this, or I wouldn't have been exposed to this, or I wouldn't, this opportunity might not have been uh, come in front of me unless I had gone through this other thing. And so it's just trying to tell people when they're in the midst of it to just keep getting up and keep moving forward, and it will pass, but you have to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and it's so hard to do that. And so to have other people who you can relate to that say, "Hey, like I've been through maybe not exactly what you're going through, but I've been through it and you can get through it. Like you said, get up, keep moving and don't stop." So I love that. And I also think that the thing that you said is, maybe opportunities do come in front of you, but maybe you're not ready, you know?
Yeah,
And if you hadn't gone through those things, maybe you wouldn't have been ready for it, or prepared for
exactly.
it in that way. Um, I know that you've had an amazing career, and I know obviously you still love it because you're still here. What do you think is maybe the thing that you're most proud of or your biggest accomplishment so far?
Well, I think the maybe just that I've been doing it for 37 years. To me, just considering some of the obstacles that got in my way, there was very many opportunities that I could have gone in another direction and I didn't. And I think that that's what I'm most proud of is I feel like despite things that were happening, I kept the course. And I think, for me, it was just following what my heart was telling me to do. And, I had a lot of people around me that were there to help me and hold me up and support me. But ultimately, I'm very proud of the fact that I pulled from somewhere within and kept moving forward and just kept doing what I knew that I needed to do, and I don't think that I'm done. I still think that there's a lot ahead of me, but that's what I'm proud of. It's not the titles that I've held or the awards that I've received or whatever. I mean, those are all really nice reminders of the hard work. But I think what I'm most proud of is the fact that despite the bad days and despite the even just the good days, I still got up every day and, put my uniform on or, donned whatever it was what place I was going to be playing that day, whether it was a mom or whether it was a grandmother or a wife or I was a police officer or I was a sergeant or I was a chief. I got up every day and went back to work. And that's what I'm most proud of, I think.
I love that. And the one word I wrote down is you persevered.
Yeah.
There was that perseverance of like, I'm gonna I'm gonna keep going and I'm gonna be successful. And I absolutely love that. And you and I have talked offline a little bit, and you shared some personal stories with me. And if you're willing to share, because I know the one thing that I think a lot of people forget is that, of course, there are stresses on the job, but there are also personal stressors, and you are human, and you have work life and you have home life, and there's challenges in both. And you know if you're willing to maybe share some of the things that you've gone through, and you know the things that helped you after the fact.
Sure. So, like you mentioned, it's not always just career struggles that come up. There's all kinds of things in life that are going to teach you things. And, I went through a particularly rough period in life. I guess it's been about 20 years now, but I was recently divorced and was really struggling with post-divorce, like, depression and what am I going to do? And I was still in my hometown and I had met somebody and started dating them. Um, it was not a very long relationship. I soon, came to realize that it obviously was not the right relationship for me. There was a lot of reasons why that relationship came about. I think I had rushed into something a little bit, probably too soon before I had actually got my feet settled and kind of understood where I was at. And I was probably still reeling from a failed marriage and um, got involved with a man. And as I decided to just break things off with him, one thing that it all makes sense now, but I had some mental things I think that were going on, and um, I found myself coming home from a shift at midnight, and I thought that we had broken things off, and he was supposed to have been moving out of my residence, and that's not what happened. He had waited for me to come home and had basically barricaded us in the house. He had all of my weapons. I was serving on a tactical team at the time, so I had all of my tactical gear, my guns, everything were at home, loaded and ready to go. Well, he had all of those in his possession. And so we basically commenced to a night of I was held hostage, I was beaten, I was shot at, just horrific things that I went through that evening. Um, his intent was he was going to kill me and then kill himself. It was From a police standpoint, it was a pretty interesting evening because, at the same time, I was trying to figure out, how to negotiate, how to get myself out of this situation. Um, I was in my pajamas, that's all I had. And trying to figure out how I was going to get away from this and get some help. And as time ticked on and it was the morning and the sun was coming up and I remember hearing birds outside and I remember starting to hear traffic and I knew that it was kind of coming to this close that something was going to happen because I think he knew intuitively that people were going to start calling or people were going to start stopping by the house and it resulted in he shot himself in front of me um, after massive amounts of talking to him. He decided that my punishment for this breakup was to watch him kill himself. And so that essentially is the story. That's what happened. I was able to, of course, get out of the house. I had a police radio at the house with me, and I was able to call for help. And of course, the troops came. I was rushed to the hospital. And then all the press and the investigation that occurred. And my family they all lived in that town. I had a son that was with my ex-husband at the time. They had to go find my child. I had, excuse me, asked the officer to go get my son out of the school before news started to break. It was a small town, and I was basically sent to the hospital with, the interviews, and they had initially set me up with a psychiatrist and a psychologist to start working with me over this whole thing. So it was probably, I guess, a couple of weeks. I was under the care of my folks at my house, and under doctor care. And they, an investigation, of course, ensued, and of course they figured out what had happened. And then it was, of course, your administration is you're getting put on administrative leave, and I began treatment therapy for several months before I was able to come back to work. So, I think a lot of the message in that too that I have when people hear of this story is just to understand that these types of things, it's not just people that your minorities or people, domestic violence doesn't discriminate. And here I was, an officer that probably, in hindsight, probably should have known better. I'm really glad that I was recognizing that something was wrong. Um, but now I look at it, it was very, very hard. It was a very difficult thing to get through, and it was a very difficult thing to get back into this career after something like that happening. But I'm here to testify that it can be done and that you can do it and you can recover and you can overcome and you can use it as a tool and something to help other people, because I guarantee there's people all around us that are going through um, really tough things in their life. So that's one of the stories, but
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable and having that mindset of like, wow, that was really hard, but I want to be that person that lets everyone else know that you can still pick yourself up and you can keep going, because there are a lot of people who wouldn't have done that, and or maybe didn't know that they could, and so thank you for sharing that. And I really appreciate you saying that this could happen to anybody. And
mhm.
in law enforcement, you are humans, and there are lives outside of law enforcement that are there are challenging things that you're going to go through, and you're not, like you said before, you're not immune to it. And I think that when you can look at it that way, there's more of a sense of empathy for people who are going through that. I come from a childhood of domestic violence. I've experienced that myself, as well, and obviously different stories, not the same and not comparing at all. But I do think that when you experience things like that, you do have a different perspective, and you do have that empathy for people who are going through that. And so thank you for sharing. And I know you said to me offline that eventually it was like, how can I get back to work? Like you just wanted to get back,
Mhm.
back into your career, back into maybe a sense of quote unquote normalcy. And therapy was something that really helped you to get there and kind of rebuild. Um, is that something that now you prioritize, organizationally? I know that you're a part of CACP, and you've
Mhm.
developed a peer support team regionally. If you're willing to share some of those things that, maybe this experience has now helped you to provide those resources for your people.
Well, absolutely. I have told my story to several people, and I think that even people within my organization understand, from me and from my heart, that this is important. It's not just an administrator, it's not just a chief telling you that this is something that I'm asking you or you have to do. I'm a living and breathing proof that therapy can help, and therapy and counseling and getting help can can help you through just about anything. And so with that in mind, you're right. It's very important to me. You know, we have implemented we have our own contracted psychologist here at our police department. I think a lot of police departments and sheriff's offices do. We offer annual checkups that they can go in and just talk about anything that's going on in their life. And we also have different programs within our organization and our municipality to assist employees when they're having issues with, and it may not be like domestic violence stuff, it could be financial stuff, it could be health and fitness, it could be medical stuff, it could be marriage counseling, you know, anything like that that you are struggling with. And as of recently, in the last, I think it's been about the last 4 months or so, we have joined up with our regional peer support program. I think it's fairly well known across the states, but essentially, for those of you that maybe don't know what that is, it's um, a group of people that have been trained to be able to talk to their peers when things are coming up. So a lot of times you may have an officer that really is having a problem that another officer is going to understand maybe a little bit easier than maybe their best friend.
Mm.
Um, it may be something that's law enforcement related. It may be something, a particularly tough call that somebody went to that they're really struggling with. You know, we had about a month ago, we had a couple of fairly new officers that went to an infant death. And it was just very, very traumatic for them. One of them actually had a young child at home and I don't even think that they realized how much it was affecting them. And we were able to get them implemented into peer support very quickly. And I think it helped. It gave them somebody that they were able to talk to. Those peer support employees are also connected with licensed counselors and psychotherapists. So if it's a little bit, they're not therapists, they're just somebody there to talk to. But if they also start hearing about things that maybe would be better suited to be talking with a professional license, you know, a licensed therapist, then they have those resources available right then and there to get that officer or that first responder connected. And it's not just law enforcement. We're connected with our fire department here, our dispatch, and our ambulance crews. So they all work together on this peer support team. So those are some of the things that we've implemented here. And to me, I think it's very, very important. You know, not only from a personal basis of something that I went through, there's calls that I've gone to that have bothered me too. And I think as a chief and as a leader of an organization, it's important to let my team know that, yeah, it's okay. It's okay if you're not okay. And, you know, you go to a doctor if you get a big cut, right? You go to a doctor if you know, have a sickness or a sore throat that you can't get rid of, you know. So if you're experiencing things that are affecting you or affecting the way that you're thinking, or you're noticing that you're edgy, or you're noticing this, you know, maybe your spouse or your significant other's noticing things that are going on with you. It's okay to go in and see somebody and just make sure that everything's okay. Um, you know, because first and foremost, you got to be good as a human.
Mm.
You know, this is a career, this is a profession, it's something that we do. But you know, I think it's more important that we are healthy all the way around, not only physically, but also mentally.
I love the reminder that you are a human outside of this job and you have to take care of yourself. I know we talked about this a little bit before, but I think that you guys do such a great job of taking care of everyone else around you. And a lot of times, not everyone, but a lot of times in law enforcement, you know, maybe not the best job of taking care of yourself. And if you can remind yourself that in order for you to take care of other people, you have to take care of yourself first and make sure that you're good physically, mentally, so that you can be there for your family, so that you can be there for your community and for your peers and your organization. And, you can operate at your best, because I think ultimately everyone wants longevity. Ultimately, everyone wants to, you know, perform at their best and feel their best and do their best. And so I think it's a great reminder that you got to take care of yourself and kind of in a way put your oxygen mask on first. But I also think that it's really important to have an organization that supports that, and I can tell, it exudes. Anyone who's watching the video, like it's really exuding from you that it's something that you do, and you make it a safe environment for people to actually feel like it's okay and it's safe
Yes.
to go for those resources. And how important do you think starting there is, having that, like, not just saying it's okay, but like actually like having that culture of like, no, it is actually okay. Like you're not we're not just saying it, like our actions are backing up what we're saying here. Because I feel like sometimes there's still, maybe people are still a little like hesitant, or maybe don't have that trust of like, is it actually okay? So like how important do you think that is to build the culture within an organization?
I think it's super important, and I think it starts with the leadership in your organization. You know, I was always an athlete most of my life, and I went through a period in the last couple of years where I had some injuries, had some significant injuries. Some were like a chronic thing that was going on. I had a knee that needed to be replaced, and of course, the great for the women out there, the menopause starts to hit, and I was really going downhill. My blood pressure, come to find out, my blood pressure was through the roof. I had gained quite a bit of weight, and I just remember when I got to that breaking point and thinking, here I am, I'm this leader of an organization, and I am not taking the steps to take care of myself. And, I started with even displaying to my staff, I'm not going to be putting in, on your average day, I'm not going to be putting in those 15-hour days or whatever. Of course, if we have something critical happen or we have a disaster, of course, we're all there. But on those just normal, fairly routine days, I had to start making decisions that I needed to leave on time. Even when things weren't done, I was going to leave on time and I was going to go take care of myself. And that's what I did. And I got myself back into the gym. I got myself back, eating wholesome foods. I've, went through a whole process of trying to figure out my sleep patterns because sleep and rest is so vital
Mhm.
to um, to survival and to recovering from anything. That's when your body heals. And so for me, it's just really important that the leaders in this organization also not only, I don't want to say that they're buying into it, but they're actually doing it.
Mhm.
And those are the people that work for you are looking up to you to set the example. And we do our best. We're not going to always be perfect,
Right.
but I think it's really important that we are showing our team that, hey, we're humans too, and we're out here trying to do our best. And I want to do my best for the team here because I feel like I work for them, and they deserve to have somebody that's going to walk the walk.
I love that, the walk. Have you ever heard the quote, the great aim of education is not knowledge but action? Have you heard of this?
I have not, but it sounds amazing.
I That's something that I try to live by. It's like we know all these things. Like we've educated ourselves, like we know the things that we need to do to take care of ourselves, but it's all for nothing if we're not taking action, if we're not
Yep.
actually doing it. And I try to live by that. I try to incorporate that into my teaching of like how, how can we have these resources that are accessible and easy so that you are actually utilizing them and you're actually doing things because it's one thing to know, but like you gotta, there's a next step to it, and it's actually doing it. And I think to your point, like all of us are human. There's been plenty of times, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this can relate. Like there's been plenty of times where, we kind of let things slip or we're not maybe prioritizing it as much because life starts to get in the way, whether that's work life or home life. And I think that for me, like I've had to um, set boundaries, which is what it sounds like you did too, of like, nope, I'm leaving on time and I'm going to take care of myself. And it's like setting those boundaries and then just trying to be consistent with it, because motivation comes and goes, but it's the consistency that you can fall back on if you just, like you said earlier, keep putting one foot in front of the other and do the thing. But it's also never too late. Anyone who's listening who maybe like is in that position of like it's really hard and maybe I don't have the time or the motivation to do it. I think that every new day is a new day that you can get up and try to do something,
Mhm.
for
Well,
your.
and there's always time. You just have to reprioritize things. And that was another lesson that I had to learn
Yeah.
a couple years ago is I had to start prioritizing because, when it comes down to it, this is a very honorable profession. I'm very happy that I have been blessed with being able to be a part of it, but it's not what defines me. And I'm not always going to be in law enforcement. I still have a lot of years ahead of me that I most likely will not be in law enforcement. And so I want to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, whether I'm in this profession or not, because you still, especially these younger officers, they still have families to go to. They have children that are looking up to them and need their mom or their dad to be there for them, and so it's imperative. And it's just interesting how, as the leadership and as I started incorporating some of these boundaries for myself and my staff is seeing me at the gym every morning putting the reps in, it's amazing how, wow, there's more people now going to the gym. There's more people wanting to do those things. So it's like it does have an impact on people. And especially if you are a leader of an organization, what you do and your actions have a tremendous amount of impact on the people that are working for you or those that are looking up to you for guidance. And I know that even as I age, if something out here happens, I have, a better chance of surviving. I have a better chance of a long life ahead of me if I take care of myself amidst no matter what job you're in. But you're right, as you said before, can be a very stressful job, but there are a lot of resources out there to help you manage it and maneuver through it and still live a very healthy, productive life.
Yeah, and I think that, it's interesting because I always ask people, um, anytime I work with an organization, I'm like, what is your wellness why? Why is it important for you? And I always tell people like that has to come from you. It can't come from me or, anyone else around you, but why is it important for you to stay physically and mentally fit? And everyone always has different answers. Sometimes it is safety and performance on the job, sometimes it's family. And a lot of times it's retirement. It's like because I want to have a long retirement, but I really have kind of boiled it down to a core why that I think most people, if not every single person, has, and it's longevity. I think that everyone wants to have longevity in this career and life after retirement so that they can be there for their family, so that they can, feel good and for a long time. And I think that the more you can lead by example, I think that's contagious. Like you said, I think that when people see other people doing those things proactively, because that's the hardest one, like reactive is easier, proactive's
Mhm.
harder. But if you see other people who you look up to, who you respect, who are putting in the reps and doing the things, then you start to kind of look at yourself like, oh man, like I got to get myself in there too. And so I think it's contagious. I think the more you as an individual, and I think that everyone who's listening has that ability to lead by example and to, prioritize themselves, and that'll inspire others. And I think that the more that can happen, the longevity piece of it is going to come with it.
Yep. And I would say that my why is for me.
I love it.
It's for me. And it's not in this selfish mode. It's just it's for me. I want to feel good every day. And if I only live another day, that's great. I had a great day, you know? So it is. It's for me. It's and if I know that I'm doing good in here and in here, and I'm healthy and I'm doing the best that I can, I know that I'm going to perform well. I know that I'm going to, be a good grandmother. I know I'm going to be a good wife, a good mom. I know that, I'm going to, if I end up retiring or move on to some other career, I know that I'm going to do well. So I do it for myself and, you know, kind of like, you brush your teeth every day. So it's like you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're okay. I don't want to be struggling every day. I don't want my end days to be a struggle.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And I don't think that that sounds selfish at all. Not at all. I have a very similar why.
Mhm.
And I've seen people around me and what happens when you don't take care of yourself. And, you know, I think that you can learn what not to do as
Mhm.
well, and maybe sometimes you can learn more from like what not to do. And I've seen, people in my life who, were sedentary and didn't take care of themselves and what ended up happening. And I have that same perspective. Like I want to feel as good as possible for as long as possible, and
Absolutely.
I don't want the end of my life to be where I'm immobile and I can't do anything and I'm just like slowly just like waiting for it all
Hmm.
to be over. I want to have a good sprint at the end.
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know. I have one last question for you. What words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier, or maybe something that really did help you along the way.
Um, I think, and I've given this advice out, is to take advantage of every opportunity that you can. And and I'm speaking primarily law enforcement, but there are a lot of different opportunities in law enforcement to expand your knowledge base. So take advantage of those assignments that maybe you didn't think you wanted to do. Get your education because I think it's good to have added knowledge and take care of yourself, invest in your retirement. I didn't do that at 25. I don't think they'll listen to me on that one, um, but it's, just keep pushing forward and also that, this is a great career and there's many great people that decided that they didn't want to be in law enforcement and that's okay too, you know, um, but just seek those moments in life that make you happy and try to reduce your stress. And there's so many different ways to do that. And I think even as you mentioned before, it just seems like I'm hearing a lot of reports on research that, a lot of disease and a lot of aging, stems from stress and mental health. types of things, or things that people are just not dealing with. And so, if your ultimate goal is longevity as a young man or young woman, take care of yourself and, eat well, exercise, breathe, laugh, um, and don't entirely encompass your entire world around law enforcement. Have friends that are not in law enforcement, have activities that have nothing to do with law enforcement, and try to keep that balance. This job is hard enough without spending your time off thinking about it too. So that was a long-winded answer, but
It was great.
um, a lot of things that I wish that I would have known better when I was younger.
Thank you. I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your story and your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. And, anything that we can do to help law enforcement out here, to keep pushing forward and doing the reps, I'm all over it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.